It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Kevin Akeroyd, CEO of Sovos. From a small town in Missouri to Stanford Business School, this three-time CEO is not the proverbial polished executive. He's a man who's not afraid to go off message and proclaims to be overt, loud, and challenging to get things done. With countless mergers and acquisitions experience under his belt, and having worked for small venture-backed endeavors to being a division head for industry heavyweights like Oracle and Salesforce, Kevin is a builder who works to understand where companies are stagnating, where to innovate, and find their breakthrough potential, and ultimately how to move from point solution to platform. Kevin's leadership philosophy is that it's not enough to be brilliant. Transparency and communication are paramount, and it's the job of the CEO to look around corners and see what's coming. Kevin brings this level of accountability to his customers, partners, and employees. His mission at Sovos is to evolve compliance from its current state of being a painful requirement for business to being a force for growth in every company, every industry, and in every country. Kevin Akeroyd, welcome into the corner office.
I am delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. A couple of technical glitches to get us going here today, but there's no holding a good man down. So where do we find you today, Kevin? What part of the world are you in?
I go back and forth between Seattle and Scottsdale, depending on the month, and you do find me in my very last week in Scottsdale before I migrate like a goose north again and head up to Washington for the summer.
That makes good sense. Leave before those triple digits come, I guess, right? Terrific. Well, I don't think you're from either of those places. Obviously, we talked in your bio about coming from Missouri. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your early years, where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Yeah, a lot of people have heard the term military brat when kids move around a lot as the parents go to different military bases. I was an academic brat. My parents kept moving to get postgraduate degrees. So Dad got his first one in Connecticut. Then we moved to Pennsylvania. Mom got her first master's. We moved to Iowa. Dad got his second master's. We moved to northern Missouri. Mom got her second master's. Then we moved to southern Missouri. And Dad got his PhD. So we literally moved every 3 years as my parents got a lot of postgraduate degrees.
Wow.
So grew up as an academic brat and moved a lot.
So they were professors, I presume, at those various.
They were just academics. They weren't professors. They never wanted to teach school. They just wanted to continue to go get degrees. So lifelong academics. And then we moved to Washington State my junior year in high school after Dad got his PhD. They did finally take some real jobs, and they were not teaching jobs. They just were voracious about their postgraduate education for 15 years of my childhood.
Wow, that's awesome. Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, one brother, one sister. Sister's 1 year younger, and brother's 4 years younger. Got
it. Well, I guess there was no question that you'd be going to some sort of tertiary education when you finished high school, right?
The notion of not going to at least undergraduate never even crossed anyone.
Not on the table.
That wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even a consideration.
Yeah. So were you inspired by that? Or tell us, kind of the things that kind of floated your boat growing up, particularly with mom and dad so deep into academia?
Yeah, a couple things. I knew I didn't want to follow in the footsteps. I knew I didn't want to go to school for 20 years after I was an adult. So I didn't want to be them. But boy, I admired the pursuit. I admired the intellect. I admired the conviction around, wanting to be as good as they could be in there. And I really admired the work ethic because basically you think about it, Graham, one of them was getting another postgraduate degree. Somebody else was teaching school, basically.
Yeah.
So raising a family of five, and paying for another postgraduate degree on one school teacher's salary, to say that, we grew up pretty underprivileged, but just the motivation and their willingness to kind of work that hard, and they somehow pulled it off. And even though we were underprivileged, we never really, felt like it.
Right.
So I always just had a deep admiration for their ability to pull both off and raise three good kids, and work the way they worked in the process. It was even though I didn't want to be them, they sure motivated me and inspired me, and I sure respected the heck out of their commitment, and the work ethic that they demonstrated.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And were you living on campuses for most of those years and growing
No,
up?
we were not. We were literally living on the farm. They're
Yeah.
the last one, literally 50 miles away from the University of Missouri, where Dad got his PhD. And we grew up farm kids, milking cows, slopping pigs, splitting wood, growing most of the food we ate, et cetera. So I was a farm boy.
So when they were studying, I guess they were living on the farm. They would just go in for
That's
work
exactly
with their
right.
advisors and so forth.
That's
Right.
exactly
Right.
Yep.
Gosh, great. Wow, awesome. And did you have like a greater family around you, brother, uncles and aunts, grandparents and so forth? Or was it kind of an isolated farm community?
We did not. Almost everybody on both sides of the family were either on the East Coast or the West Coast. So we were kind of orphaned. It was just the five of us in the Midwest, and everybody else was on the Atlantic or on the Pacific.
Got it. And how were your scholastic performance during those years?
This is going to shock you, but I was pretty driven to I was pretty driven to be the best academically in the whole darn school. So I'm guilty as charged of being that straight A student all the way through. I never got anything other than an A, and that was by design, because I was not going to let myself get anything other than A.
Of course.
So not out of ego or narcissism or anything like that. It was just more. I think the academic pursuits and just mentorship, and I certainly had a good home environment that helped me. But again, that drive to be really good and achieve. Again, not only was college not an option, but not getting straight A's through high school was also not an option. It was kind of a bar I held myself to.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Probably science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you chemistry, biology, physics, loved them all, or was there one that you kind of deep dived into?
You know what I will say, which is funny because I do nothing now. I'm just a white collar business guy sitting behind a desk or in an airplane or in an office. But back then, the hands-on stuff. Like making things turn colors or smoking or potentially make them go boom. So I think chemistry was probably my favorite.
That seems to always be the one. Chemistry labs was a lot of fun in high school, as I recall. What about sports, music, theater, any other things you got involved with as a kid?
Yeah, I was pretty active. I held jobs. So right when I was a little bit younger, I had a job baling hay. I had a job mowing yards. I had a job splitting wood. So I worked a lot because, again, just not a lot of money to go around. And if I wanted to have any pocket money, I was going to earn it myself. So I literally started taking jobs when I was 12 all the way through, high school and college. And then I was pretty busy. I played football and basketball through high school, and I was in the band, and I was in kind of like the Model United Nations and class president and all that. So I started sleeping about 4 hours a night when I was 12, and 40 years later, here I am, maybe getting 6 a night, but I kept a very full agenda, and again, just wanted to do it. Had a voracious appetite for all that. Wanted to make money, wanted to do sports, wanted to play the instruments, wanted to be in student government, wanted to do well in school. I just kind of had a little bit of a voracious appetite to do a lot of stuff, and I did.
Do you feel like you kind of had that entrepreneurial urge earlier on? I know that we're going to tackle that later in your career, but
I think I would have explained it that way right when I was going through it, but I do think that's a direct correlation now, Fran. Yeah, I do think that's right. I think what drove me to want to go do things like leave my Fortune 500 company and go join a pre-revenue 17-person startup, out in California. I think those are probably the same psychoses.
Yeah, high risk.
Which is
high risk.
I think they come from the same fertile ground.
Well, with mom and dad, is having such an excellent, tertiary degree, graduate degree, et cetera. It must have been hard to kind of decide which college you're going to go to. How did you kind of decide where that was and why?
Actually, that was pretty easy. When they finally got done with their 5 postgraduate degrees, we ended in Eastern Washington State. That's where they finally took jobs. And again, they would have loved to have helped me financially, but they couldn't. Right. So that meant that I had to do in-state tuition because I was footing the bill myself.
Right.
And I had never lived in a city. I had always grown up, in really, really rural Midwest. So in-state, footing the bill myself, want to live in a city, that meant Seattle.
Right.
And therefore that meant University of Washington. So it was a pretty easy decision because it was the best university, public university in a city in the state. So I zeroed in on that really quickly. I applied to a lot of places, but I very much intended to and wanted to go to University of Washington. And I was delighted when I got in, and that's what I did.
And did you pursue a business degree or economics? What did you decide to do?
I did. It was a business administration. Yep.
Right, right. And then on to an MBA after that?
I graduated undergraduate in 1990. And then 14 years later, after I'd already moved to the Bay Area, I went and did that shortcut executive MBA program they call the EPSO at Stanford Graduate School of Business.
Right.
But there's 14 years between my undergrad at UW and the EPSO program at Stanford.
Got it. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So tell us about that first job you took out of college. A little bit about the logic behind it and what were the kind of things that you were doing.
I had done kind of the same thing. I knew that I wanted to be a white collar business guy. I wanted to have a shiny suit and a red tie and starched white shirt and a briefcase. And I wanted to fly and I wanted to make money. Again, I think, I love, respect, admired my parents, but again, I wanted to be the exact opposite. They grew up underprivileged academia. I wanted to make money and be a white collar business guy. And I figured out really early on that I actually wanted to get into enterprise sales, which was nice because the fact that I had that in my head freshman year meant that I was able to do, in addition to waiting tables and tending bar, which is how I paid my way through school, during the day, I actually took on white collar sales internships at large companies. And then I did things like the Business Association and the American Marketing Association. So I was able to do extracurricular stuff and have real resume work experience with internships. And I did that all 4 years. So I could just stand out a little bit more when I went to look for that big Fortune 500 white collar enterprise sales job that I knew I wanted. So I was lucky. Brant, I knew what I wanted 4 years ahead of when I was going to graduate. So I was able to build a nice little, resume experience that a lot of kids don't do, not because they're not capable. They just don't really know what they want to do until their senior year, and they don't have that time. But I was lucky. I knew what I wanted to do, so I was able to build it up and did that all 4 years.
Awesome. And did you get people responsibility pretty early on?
I did. I was the rookie of the year. I went to work for a Fortune 300 company and it went white collar sales. Exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Figured out pretty quickly that all that suits and starched shirts and ties and airline miles and long hours were nowhere near as glamorous or as glorious as I thought. They were just freaking hard work. So I got disavowed of the notion that this thing was glamorous very, very, very quickly. But I was very, very, very fortunate. I got rookie of the year. I won sales rep of the year the next 4 years. And therefore I got into management very, very early. And started people managing 5 years in, still in my 20s, and had a really good run for a couple of years people managing. So, in year 8 and 9 at R. Donnelly, I was actually granted P&L responsibility for a business unit when I was 29. So, again, just incredibly lucky that I was able to work for a big blue chip Fortune 500 company that allowed me that kind of thing, and I was able to parlay that individual contributor success into early management, and then early management success into getting a shot at a P&L, which most kids don't get when they're 29.
Right. What were some of those early leadership lessons that you took away in those first 8-9 years at Donnelly?
It was the gap. You think you've got it figured out when you're a people manager. Oh, I've got this all figured out. But no, boy. Leadership versus management, very different. P&L responsibility versus frontline bookings and revenue responsibility, very different. Global versus just domestic, very different. Doing M&A, and acquisitions versus just doing something organic that the company's been doing, very different. The HQ interaction and actually having to deal with things like boards of directors and management committees and steer codes and all that. So, all of the things that are that spread the wings leap between being a P&L owner and a line manager were all just phenomenal lessons. And again, they sure seemed easy, right? When I was looking up at the job and then, okay, boy, I guess there's a lot more to this. It's a lot harder work than I thought, but I really loved it. And I just learned such a great amount. So being able to actually do that for 2 years, my final 2 years in this great place where I grew up for 10 years, surrounded by a bunch of blue chip, Chicago, Chicago and Kellogg grads. I mean, just unbelievable mentorship. So that when I pitched my tent, went west to, go start taking P&L roles in Silicon Valley earlier, I left with a toolkit, and some experience and lessons that, again, I just will forever be grateful for getting that opportunity in a large company to learn how to do it right before I set off on my own.
Did you have some mentors along the way?
I did, some phenomenal mentors. Yeah, I really did.
Tell us about some of those. What were some of the lessons that you took away during those years you were mentored?
One of them, a guy named John, I'm going to do two ends of the spectrum, was the quintessential. Go to Wikipedia and say, by the book, white collar president of a Fortune 500. I mean, everything by the book, how to do everything well, polished, disciplined, right, et cetera. He taught me what classic down the middle, what you learn about in business school, the way to do everything right. On the contrast, I had a guy named Terry, and he was a swashbuckler. He was a risk taker. He was a pirate. He was a, so if you wanted to, and you'll use analogy, right? John was a lot more like Jack Welch, right? He just down the middle business icon. Terry was a little bit more like Larry Ellison, right? Boarding ships and taking no prisoners and throwing people overboard and swashbuckling his way to success. So those are the two that still stand out most in my mind because they were the most impactful.
Well, and speaking of Larry Ellison, you spent some time at Oracle as well.
I did.
Yeah. So kind of did a little bit of CEO entrepreneurial work and then went to the large companies. How would you kind of describe those early years? Do you tried out, obviously, as you said, Fortune 300 company with Donnelly, and then it looks like you probably did a couple of early stage stuff. What brought you back to the larger companies and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I go for decade one, or chapter one is cutting my teeth in large Fortune 500. And then decade two was a decade of 0 to 100 Silicon Valley, Sand Hill Road startup, 0 to 100 million revenue. Right. And that was in a completely different world. Learned about hyperscale, learned everything about that, and really learned how to basically sell the company. So, we sold Digital Impact, which was a Draper Fisher Jurvetson company, to Axiom. We sold TLP, which was a battery ventures company, to Zillow. And then the last one, we sold Jigsaw, which is a Norwest Partners company, to Salesforce.com. And so at the end of that journey, the first answer was that I went to work for Mark Benioff back in a Fortune 500 company called Salesforce.com because I sold him the company, right, is the first part of the answer.
Right.
But by then I had figured out, hey, I'd like to go ahead and be the CEO of something much bigger, at scale. And if I'm going to do that, I probably do need to go back and do some things like business unit president jobs with P&L responsibility and start large Fortune 500 companies like Salesforce and Oracle. So part of it was opportunistic because I sold Salesforce the business. Part of it was intentional and calculated because I knew that if I wanted to go do what I'm doing now, and get the opportunity to go be the CEO of a, $600 million, 3,000 person, private equity company, being the COO or CEO of a 100-person startup was probably not going to qualify me for that job.
Right.
Being a business unit president working for a Fortune 500 company like Oracle probably was going to get me qualified for that job. So there was a lot of intentionality about going into chapter 3 and spending some time in the belly of the beast of the large Fortune 500 software companies like Salesforce and Oracle. That was by design, in addition
intentional.
To the
Yeah. Cool. And you left Oracle, I believe, and then that was going to kind of, you've done your three-peat now in CEO. So were those businesses, kind of building on each other? Tell us a little bit of those transitions and, of course, getting to Sovos where you are today. Yep. But did each of these kind of have a logical step for you, or was it more random in their kind of development? You seem like a pretty preordained kind of guy.
I am very intentional. So I know this is going to shock you too. Now that you've heard me talk a little bit, I had a plan. And in private equity world, we use fancy terms like investment thesis. So I'll use the fancy term called investment thesis instead of having a plan. I knew that Cision was an opportunity to go build a enterprise-wide platform for earned media, because when I was at Oracle, Adobe, Salesforce, Oracle, IBM all had their large marketing clouds, and we were all aimed at advertising, just paid media, and marketing, which is owned media. None of us were actually doing influencers or PR, ratings and reviews and things like that. So I had an investment thesis that I wanted to go build the big earned media platform, because the big guys were only focused on the other two. And that's exactly what we did. The private equity firm agreed. They had an initial asset. And we between organic and acquisition, we bought 5 more companies and took Cision from a $200 million company to about an $800 million company over a 4-year run, which was a fantastic experience. Magnet was Pro Unlimited. Magnet was the same thing. Took that from about 700 to about a billion, no, actually about 2 billion. Acquiring and organically to take something from point solution into a part-time employee platform. Because again, most people don't realize this, but like the Workdays of the world, or the ADPs of the world, they only apply to full-time employees, and 50% of the global workforce is gig or part-time or contract, whatever. And all those, so Google, for instance, or Apple ran 100,000 full-time employees on Workday, which everybody knows. The 200,000 non-full-time employees actually ran on my software, right? Because Workday wasn't purpose-built to go do the FTE. So that was another, let's go build the part-time employee platform, system of record, the way Workday has the full-time employee. And guess what I'm doing here in Sovos too? The tax landscape is very, very fragmented. And again, this is the PE investment theory. Let's go put the right things together, acquire the right assets against an investment thesis to say, I'm going to take 1, and 1 together. We're going to make 1 + 1 + 1 = 10, not 3. We're going to put the logical pieces together, and we're out building the kind of that one ring to rule them all, for all things tax, reg, and compliance globally. So private equity has been pretty cool, where you have an investment thesis, which is a fancy name for a plan. You have the capital to go buy the companies, right, that you need to actually go stitch together. And then your execution challenge is to do all of that integration, tech integration, systems integration, people integration, culture integration, go-to-market integration. But if you do it, right, you have the opportunity to do that quintessential. The whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. And I've been super fortunate that I'm now my 3rd go-around of this, whole being greater than the sum of the parts. So I've loved every second of private equity.
Now, have you been with the same private equity group through all 3 of those last years?
Unique each time. So each one is a new private equity sponsor group.
Yeah, cool. And today it sounds like you've been about a year, I guess, with Sovos. And just tell us, tell us a little bit about, the markets you serve. I know you've got a global operations, and kind of what's ahead for the company.
Yeah, let's see. So right now it's fragmented. Well, I'll give this a couple answers. There's big categories. One of them is called like sales and use tax. A quick example, right? A Sovos client like Home Depot, they need to make billions of calls, right? When we're standing there at Home Depot at the checkout line, right in the store, right, when we're ready to check out, they've got to actually call Sovos' tax determination engine to determine the tax, render it back, so that we pay tax and basically, near real time right there at the cash register. Same thing on an e-commerce store. So that would be a great simple use case for what we call sales and use tax. That's a big category. The second one is kind of the forms and regulatory tech stuff. So W-2s, 1099s, unclaimed property, ACA and insurance, all of that stuff, which is called direct tax. That takes technology, right? Data analytics, et cetera. Sovos is big in that. And then things like GVAT. And people know kind of VAT if you cross the border on a vacation, but what VAT really is countries taxing, right, corporations. So a good example, if I'm NCR and I take an order from Bank of America to build 5,000 brand new cash machines, because Bank of America is ready to go retrofit, right, their 5,000 branches with shiny new cash machines. And I manufacture those machines in Mexico. Well, Mexico is a compliance country. So if I'm NCR, I can't even ship those machines off of my factory floor before the Mexican government has talked to Sovos tax GVAT platform, determined the tax, and the tax has been remitted. So it's not just audits and files anymore. I literally can't even ship my product in a compliance country. And those compliance countries have gone from LATAM. Now they're rolling across EMEA and Asia Pacific. There'll be probably 65 or 70 VAT mandate countries in the next 2 years, and there'll be 100 in the next 4 years. So those are just some categories of tax. And again, it's been highly fragmented. So the tax manager for the toilet paper division of Kimberly-Clark in Minnetonka, Wisconsin, she was able to make her one little determination for her one little business, right, for one of these pieces and parts. And same thing. Now this has become so mission critical that the chief financial officer and chief information officer, they kind of want to buy this, right? Because now it's in 85 countries. If I'm a big company like Apple, right, it's not just sales and use tax in my retail stores, and it's not just 1099. I've got to comply with 85 different compliance countries around the world, and every one of them is different. So I need a tax platform, and they want to buy this, right? You only want an ERP, right? You only buy one CRM, you only buy one HCM. Certain categories become mission critical, and literally it's a corporate wide buy. One system, is used across all 85 countries and all 22 business units. And the tax regulation compliance market is basically starting to look like that. I want to buy one rather than the CFO allowing 11 tax managers in 11 countries to make 11 different point solution systems. That's the inflection point that this industry is in right now. And that's what Sovos has done is, right, let's go be that one ring to rule them all. Let's put all of it together across a global footprint. So when the CFO and the CIO want to buy one platform, the way they buy SAP for ERP or Salesforce for CRM, now they can with Sovos. And that's the first time in the industry it's been done. So again, like I said, this is kind of my third time around that point solution to platform playbook. So it's been fun for me. I know I've done it in a couple different industries. Now I'm over here doing it in this new tax category. So I'm learning a lot because I've never been in tax before. But at the same time, I'm bringing a lot of gray hair and scar tissue, having done this playbook a couple times in the process, which is pretty cool. I thrive on that too. Half of it is my old man wisdom, because I've been there and done that. Half of it is a new intellectual challenge because I know nothing about the domain expertise. And when I can have both, where I'm in kindergarten sprinting up the learning curve and being old man, gray hair, bringing wisdom at the same time, that's where I really get energized. So this is giving me a chance to scratch that itch again.
Sounds like a high degree of curiosity is needed as well, right?
I really do. I like learning.
Love that. How would you say your leadership styles evolved over that period, Kevin, particularly looking at these last 10 years in these three different CEO roles?
Yeah, most people, when they describe me on that, one big category is, empathetic, meaning I really, really want to understand, empathize, right? Tell me why we can't get through that hurdle. Tell me why we're stuck in this cultural position. Tell me why we have this belief structure. I'm a big time, I'll get to number two, I'm a results maniac and I work with a real alacrity, but understanding, right, what my partners really want, what my employees really want, what my customers really want, what my prospects want, what my stakeholders want. So a high level of empathy and comprehension is like table stakes, because I think you're a better leader if you take the time to empathize and comprehend. So people say that I'm an empathetic comprehender. The second part is people say that I am bold. I like to move fast. I move with alacrity. Love fancy terms like that. Right. Think big, act big. I don't take small steps, right? I think big, I act big. And we shoot for the stars. We don't shoot for the moon. So people have always accused me of that. And I think I'm guilty of it. The third one is I'm very, very empowering. I want you to come work for me to do the best job of your life. And I'm hiring you because you're better, right? Whether you're chief sales officer, chief marketing officer, chief product officer, chief technology officer, chief financial officer. Every one of you better be extraordinarily better than me, right, at all of it. And I'm here to create an environment, a company, a culture where you are empowered to lead and do the best work of your life. So people know they're not going to come and be micromanaged, or be told what to do. Again, see point number two. So long as, right, we're held accountable for results, speed, right, and getting the job done, right? So there's a lot of operational rigor around that empowerment, but that's how I like to do it, is a lot of operational rigor and accountability to earn the right to sit in this wonderful empowerment, job. So people really will focus on that. And then people say I'm kind of a open, transparent communicator, honest to a fault, right? So even if the news is bad, hey, at least Kevin's going to tell us, right? We could be good, could be bad, could ugly, right? We may not like it, but he's always going to shoot straight, right? And that's, that like here, that's for all 3,000 employees. So, I'm going to always, if you work for me, whether you're an individual contributor all the way up to a C-suite executive, you're going to be the beneficiary of a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, and a lot of candor. So
Yeah.
I'll stop there. Those are four that I usually hear when I hear people discuss my leadership style. Those are probably four legs of the stool that stand out the most.
It's awesome. Building a company culture really does come from the corner office. And, you've done this now 3 times and you've got a global organization now. How do you do that, particularly in these post-COVID days where so much of our communication is, of course, over Zoom or Teams meetings? And, what are kind of some of the skills and the tools that you use in order to build out that workworkplace culture?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think because of the remote work and dispersed and global, right? And then because of the pandemic and work from home, I think that it puts the premium on that last one, the commitment to communication, to frequent communication, to honesty, to candor. So, I still also believe, I still fly a lot. So I believe that leaders, including the CEO, should actually, right, in a global culture. So I go to Brazil, I go to Chile, I go to Portugal, I go to Turkey, I go to London, I go to Atlanta, I go to Boston, I go to Minneapolis. My personal belief, and maybe I'm old school, is that leadership still needs to actually go get out in the field and go see their employees. And everywhere I go, I'll have town halls, I'll have office hours, I'll have open mics, we'll do happy hours. So my personal belief is that the in-person leadership should not go out of style, even if you can do everything Zoom. Now, right, when you're in 25 different countries and the whole pandemic and work from home, it's impossible to touch everybody like that. So then I think it's just using the tools. Right. And I don't care what culture survey tool you use, but you should do it every single month and publish it out so the entire 3,000 employee base knows what each other is saying. Right. This is what you guys say. Right. Surveys. I don't care what survey tool, do them regularly. The Zoom, Teams, WebEx. I don't care what web conference it is, but show up. Right. 90 minutes every single month and talk for half an hour and then do nothing but take live Q&A. And hear what people are thinking, what questions they've got. And yeah, you're not in person, but at least they can see your shiny face, right? So I think it's less about the tool you use, the format, and just more about the commitment to regular, frequent, open candor, with all the digital stuff. It's there. Use it. And in my personal opinion, don't only do that, though, to the extent that you can. Right? Try to go create opportunities to actually be there in the flesh, because I think the combination of both is really what leaders should aspire to. And that's certainly the approach I take.
Awesome. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire at Sovos?
Let's see. I tend to favor athletes. And by that, I mean, hey, can you just play? Are you just a good point guard? Use a basketball analogy. Could you actually play 4 positions on the floor?
Right. Utility player from baseball. Yeah. Right.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, utility player. Right. That's exactly right. I like people that are multiple positions and give me somebody that's an 8.5 out of 10 in 4 positions on the floor versus somebody that's a 9.5 who can only play 1 position.
Right.
So that concept of broad athletes, I look for moral fiber, integrity, right, candor, honesty. I'm big on that myself, so I very much think that's critical in leadership. I look for people that share that empathy gene that I talked about, because I think it just makes you a better leader. I definitely make sure that I'm looking for EQ and IQ, not just the IQ piece. I look for people with kind of a big peripheral vision or wide aperture, right? Rather than somebody who's just narrow tunnel focused. And I grew up right with a lot of drive and grit, fire in the belly. And, I look for people that've got that. I don't want people that are kind of complacent or don't have that fire in the belly, that grit, that work ethic. I look for curiosity. I look for ambition. I want leaders to be ambitious, whatever that means, right? Whether it means growth, whether it means income, whether it means promotion, whether it means, people are ambitious about a lot of things. I don't care what you're ambitious about. I would like you to have some ambition, and that kind of goes with that fire in the belly. And then I do really look for kind of commitment to being a team player, because I'll stick with the sports analogy again. You can field a team of elite athletes, and they'll get to the playoffs. But elite athletes that play as a team with team chemistry and team commitment, those are the teams that win championships. And I think that applies to business. Everybody as much as it applies to sports. So those are the few of the things that I look for when I'm rounding up leadership teams.
That's a long list. And I'm sure by the time people get to you from interviews, they've been screened by a lot of others. Yeah. Do you have kind of like a favorite interview question? What do you try to zero in on? Let's say if you only have 5 or 10 minutes with somebody.
If I only get one, I say, okay, what do you want people to say about you at your final retirement party for work?
Mm.
And what do you want people to say at your funeral for life? That is so telling. If I only get one, I start there.
Yeah. Yeah. Get them to tell them your journey. I love it. Great.
And how do they want to be remembered? Right.
Right.
What do they want? What do they want the CEO to say on stage when at the 50-year retirement party from professional life? What do you want your friends and family to say about your personal life? Right at the funeral, at the epitaph. And it's remarkable what you learn from people, right? That take the time to actually answer that thoroughly. It's pretty telling.
I love it. Kevin, we're just about out of time. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed hearing your all background. But we always have one last question we ask all our guests, and that's, what kind of career and life advice would you give to someone who has their eyes on their own corner office someday?
Yeah, I love giving that advice. A couple of things. Start at the end, right at the goal, and go backwards. Right. So, okay, if I want to be here, and I knew I wanted to be CEO by the time I was 40. Okay, well, if I want to be there, then okay, and I right. Okay, well, that's 20 years. That's 80 quarters. So if I want to be there by quarter 80, where do I want to be in 79, 78, 76, and 75, right? Step backwards so that you kind of already have that intentionality in that plan. And you can measure your progress against it. So pick your analogy, right? If you do compound interest, right, it turns into a huge bunch of money if you don't. But that intentionality, start with where you want to get to and work backwards and make sure that you're committed to taking each step along the way. It is phenomenal how much quicker, faster, more effectively, and successfully you get there. So that's a big one. In case I haven't said it enough, that empathy and comprehension.
Yeah.
You've got to understand, especially if you're climbing the ladder. Okay, well, what does my boss need? Right? What does the steer code need? What does the board need? Right? What do my stakeholders need? What do my investors need? If I actually am empathetic and really are focused on how they win, and then how I contribute to help them win, right? And the levers I pull and the impact I have, that's not self-serving, right? It's amazing by being empathetic and comprehending and figuring out how you impact people above you. Ironically, by you doing more for others, figuring out what they need from you, you accelerate yourself quicker by not being selfish, right? So I think that's a big one. The communication, I remember after I had won Sales Rep of the Year, third year at Donnelly, all the way back when I was 25, and you got to have dinner with the CEO of a Fortune 300 company, and I told John, hey, John, I want your chair someday, right? So please tell me, right, how you got there, and communicate, let people know. This is what I hear. This is how can you help me? How can you mentor me? How can you coach me? How can you educate me? And how can I do for you? Whether it's you as a leader or you as a company or you as a board, right? So that being very overt, and that kind of goes with the intentionality. Again, I believe that working hard sets you apart. And gosh, I hate to say this because I sound like such an old geezer, but that work ethic, I got to say, I think is a bit of a dying breed right now. I don't think that the work ethic median in the United States is where it was a generation ago or two generations ago. So if you were willing to outwork everybody, I think that sets you apart even more than it has in any other future generation. So I definitely think that having that work ethic and that fire in the belly. And then the last one is just, whatever your domain is, be a master of it. Just know more, right? What sales, marketing, finance, I don't care, real estate, medicine, whatever it is. If you literally are the domain master and you got more IP between your ears than the next guy or gal, right, it's going to get you ahead. So those are a few of the things that I think. And then finally, I said one: teach yourself how to see around corners very quickly, right? Because that's what leaders do is don't think one step ahead, think 3, think 5, think 7, right? Cast that net out. And when you marry that intentionality with making it a discipline to see forward and see around corners, boy, those two connect pretty nicely, and you do start to you surface yourself as somebody that's got clear leadership caliber. So I could go on and on that, Brad, but those are there's a few advices that I give when people ask me that question. Wise counsel.
Kevin Akeroyd, CEO of Sovos, thank you so very much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you very much, Brand. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.